Have you ever felt lost when you had to make one of the biggest decisions of your life, yet no one was willing to walk that path with you? You look around and realize you're completely on your own, and that loneliness makes you hesitate. The truth is, walking alone is not merely a social circumstance. It is the greatest inner challenge we must all face. Many people fear loneliness because they see it as a sign of failure, but according to Carl Jung, loneliness is not an obstacle, it is the necessary space, the true path towards self-awareness and growth. He called it the essential condition for individuation, the journey of becoming your truest, most complete self. The strength to move forward without applause doesn't come from outer toughness. It arises from your willingness to work with the unconscious, to confront the shadow, and to nurture the inner center known as the self. Today, we will uncover the secret to transforming loneliness into an unmatched source of power, where the only companion you truly need is yourself. Are you ready to light your own path? 1. Why solitude holds meaning in Jung's philosophy. Sometimes you lie awake in bed at night, the room silent, the faint glow from your digital clock flickering against the ceiling, and suddenly your chest feels heavy. Everything during the day seems fine. Work is steady, your kids still text you, and you keep replying, "I'm fine." But when no one is around, when the noise fades, you start to hear another sound, not outside, but within. A vague feeling stirs. Who am I really living for? Who am I truly? That feeling, according to Carl Jung, is not a sign of psychological malfunction. It is the quiet knock of a sacred journey he called individuation, the process of becoming whole. Jung described it as the path through which a human being grows into wholeness. Not perfection, but wholeness. A state where the unconscious and the conscious, the light and the shadow, are reunited into one complete self. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain, when loneliness is no longer the enemy." Jung believed that to begin the process of individuation, one must have a space of silence, a place where the inner voice can finally be heard. When we are constantly surrounded by social roles, parent, employee, partner, positive person, we lose the ability to recognize our true voice. Relationships, expectations, small talk, they become layers of dust covering the mirror of the soul. Only when we stand alone does that dust begin to fall away. Loneliness becomes a pause through which the unconscious, the deepest, most hidden part of the psyche, can finally speak. In that silence, archetypes begin to appear more vividly. The teacher, the mother, the child, the hero, the healer. They are not meaningless dreams. They are the language of the collective unconscious, the way the soul sends a message. It's time to change. I once spoke with a 4-year-old woman named Laura, who had just taken early retirement after 25 years as an accountant. She told me, "I don't know what I like. I just know I'm good with numbers and I need stability." After she retired, Laura began having a recurring dream. She was standing in the middle of a desert, staring at a red door in the sand. The first time, she was afraid. The next time, curious. And by the 10th dream, she finally walked through it to find a room full of color, with easels, paintings, and the scent of oil paint. Not long after, Laura began painting. Today, she sells her first pieces in a small gallery in Texas. Jung would call that the voice of the self. When we stay silent long enough, the self, the spiritual center within us, begins to whisper. It knows the direction the ego cannot see. The shadow is not the enemy. But that journey is not a gentle one. When there is no one beside us, the parts we usually avoid begin to surface. Jung called it the shadow. It is the side of our personality, memories, and fears we once buried in order to be loved, to be accepted. In solitude, when there is no one left to perform for, the shadow steps forward and sits across from us. A man named Michael, 49 years old, once told me that after his wife passed away, he felt like he was losing his mind. He began to lash out without reason, yelling into the air, feeling waves of guilt followed by self-loathing. He said, "I don't understand why I hate myself so much." During therapy, when he started recording his dreams, he saw an image of a black wolf following him, sometimes with gentle eyes, sometimes fierce. That was the shadow. And Jung said, to confront a person with his shadow is to show him his own light. The shadow is not an enemy, It is the part of the soul demanding recognition. When Michael began writing letters to his wolf, he realized that his anger was the voice of a childhood fear of abandonment. As he dared to face it, the fear began to fade, replaced by a quiet peace. In its deepest sense, solitude is a mirror reflecting the shadow, not to punish but to heal. When we dare to stay in the empty room of the soul, we begin to see what we've long avoided. And only then does integration begin. Why being around others can sometimes blind us even more. Modern society does not encourage stillness. People see loneliness as a sign of failure, as if happiness can only exist when someone else is there to witness it. But Jung saw it differently. In a crowd, a person often wears a mask, the persona. The more we are admired, the thicker the mask becomes, and the deeper the unconscious is pushed down. We hide our true feelings behind politeness, smiles, and the excuse of being busy. When we are alone, that mask falls away, the defense mechanisms weaken, and the unconscious begins to express itself through dreams, imagination, or strange emotions. It is not random depression. It is the psyche trying to self-correct. Jung believed that in every crisis the soul is attempting to restore balance, like the sea pulling back so a new wave can rise again. The path into darkness to find the light again. Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Light does not come from forced positivity, but from daring to face the darkness within." When we are alone, we are given a rare chance to do just that without distraction, without judgment. The solution is not to fill loneliness with activity, but to walk through it. Start with small acts. Each morning, before turning on your phone, write down any image that lingers from your dream. You don't need to understand it, just record it. When you feel empty, don't drown that feeling in music or social media. Ask instead, what is this trying to tell me? If you are afraid, write a letter to that fear, as if it were a real person. Read it again a few days later, and you will notice that a part of you has been longing to be heard. Gradually, you will witness something miraculous. Loneliness begins to change shape. It is no longer a pit you fall into, but a room you are learning to live in, to light up and to name each dark corner. The transformation, returning to the center of the self. When the shadow is seen, when the unconscious is heard, something happens. The self, the center of the entire psychic system, begins to restore order. You will notice yourself becoming less tense about the past, less afraid of the future, and your sense of I no longer depends on others. You no longer need anyone's validation to feel that you are worthy. This doesn't happen overnight, but as Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that journey often begins at the very moment you think you are completely alone. Loneliness, through Jung's lens, is not an emptiness to be avoided, but a gateway leading back to the inner center where every part of you can meet again. Reason and emotion, fear and courage, darkness and light. Consider tonight a beginning. When you turn off the lights and feel lost, don't rush to escape. Take a deep breath and whisper, I am here with myself. Because perhaps that is the very first time in your life you have truly begun to move forward, even with no one beside you. 2. Changing the perception of loneliness. From lack to resource. You probably know that feeling. You lie down after a long day, the room lit only by the dim glow of a bedside lamp. Everything is silent. No messages, no voice coming from the kitchen. Only the sound of the ceiling fan and the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat. A part of you wants to turn on the TV, scroll through social media, or find some noise to fill the emptiness. But another part whispers, don't run. Stay here with me. We often fear that feeling. Loneliness tightens the heart. It makes us believe we've been abandoned. Yet according to Carl Jung, the very moment you truly stay with your loneliness without fleeing, without numbing it with noise, is when awakening begins. He wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Loneliness is not punishment. It is the first doorway to that acceptance. When loneliness stops being a crack and becomes ground, most of us confuse loneliness with solitude. Loneliness is the sense of deprivation, as if you're standing outside a brightly lit house, looking in. Solitude, on the other hand, is when you step into the darkness and learn to open your eyes wider. Jung believed that only when a person dares to stand within their solitude can they truly see their authentic self. I once spoke with Claire, 50, an editor who had always lived in the whirlwind of meetings, emails, and to-do lists. After her son left for college, her apartment became so silent she couldn't bear it. She played music constantly, called friends just to hear another voice. One day, exhausted, she turned everything off. At that moment, she told me, I felt so empty it was as if I were falling. But a few weeks later, when that emptiness began to settle, she started recording her dreams, where she found herself lost in a forest, then discovering a clear lake. I think that lake was me, she said, but the part of me I had forgotten. Claire's story is not about loss. It is about returning. When she stopped running from the silence, her soul began to speak. Loneliness, at that moment, became fertile ground where what had been forgotten could grow again. Silence, the very thing the modern mind has lost. We live surrounded by endless noise, notifications, messages, traffic, radio, TV, podcasts. The world grows louder, yet inside, we grow emptier. Jung once warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. We fear silence because, within it, the soul begins to speak. When you stop running, the unconscious begins its work. Silence signals to the mind that there is no longer anyone in control, no mask left to hold. In that moment, the images, dreams, and emotions that have been suppressed rise not to frighten you, but to be seen. Jung called this the condition necessary to activate active imagination, the method he used to converse with the unconscious. In a state of stillness, the mind naturally produces symbolic images. This is how the soul heals itself. Daniel, 46, once a creative director in New York, shared that after his company shut down, he went through a long period of anxiety disorder. He was afraid to stay home, afraid to sit still. But when he joined a program known as a noise detox, where everyone had to remain silent for 4 days, Daniel said that at first he wanted to run away. On the second day, he began to dream that he was walking through an abandoned city, but could hear piano music somewhere in the distance. When he woke, he realized music was something he had loved and abandoned because of work pressure. 3 months later, Daniel bought an old piano. He said, I think loneliness saved me. When perception shifts, emptiness turns out to be an invitation. Loneliness doesn't disappear by filling it up. It transforms into energy when we dare to face it directly. Try reframing it. Loneliness is not a lack, but an invitation to listen to what you've silenced for far too long. When you sit quietly, with no one disturbing you, your mind begins to recall images, sounds, memories. Some of them hurt, some make you laugh. That is the unconscious sending you letters. And you don't have to understand every message right away. Just respond with presence. I'm listening. In that stillness, you begin to see the difference between loneliness and tranquility. Loneliness makes you shrink. Tranquility allows you to open. One closes off, the other listens. When you begin to listen, the darkness within you no longer feels frightening. It becomes the room where you learn to touch your own soul. A small practice to nurture stillness. If you are going through a time of emptiness on your own, try a few small steps. 1. Reduce stimulation. Turn off your phone for at least 30 minutes each day. Don't turn on any sounds. Sit somewhere with natural light and simply breathe. You don't need to meditate the right way, just be present. 2. Write down what passes through you. No need for perfect sentences. Write whatever you feel in that moment. Restlessness, fear, peace, even emptiness. Writing is how the unconscious meets the conscious. 3. Observe the images in your mind. Pay attention to recurring dreams or imaginations, a room, an animal, a stranger. Don't rush to analyze them. They don't come for you to understand, but for you to feel. 4. Notice the small changes. After a week, you may sense a shift in your daily energy, less fear, a softer connection with yourself. That is the sign you are moving out of the zone of deprivation and into the zone of nourishment. Loneliness is the truest mirror the soul gives you. In it, you no longer see the image praised by society, but your real self fragile, unfinished, yet genuine. And from that place, you begin to rebuild the most enduring relationship of your life. the one with yourself. Jung wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That line is not just philosophy, it is instruction. When you stop looking outward for someone to fill the void and begin to turn inward, you are no longer lonely. You are awakening. And one day, you will realize this. You can sit in silence without turning on music. You can walk alone without feeling empty. You can face yourself without fear. At that moment, loneliness ceases to be an abyss. It becomes an open space where you are free to breathe, think, create, and live authentically. And perhaps, in that very moment, you will smile at the memory of nights that once made you cry. Because you understand now, without them, you would never have found your way home. Loneliness takes nothing from you. It only removes the noise, so you can finally hear what matters most, the gentle voice whispering within, "I'm here." 3. Working with the shadow, the defining step, when moving forward alone. There are nights when you can't sleep, not because of any noise outside, but because of something stirring within. An old voice, a memory you thought you had buried, a pang that feels like an unhealed wound. Sometimes it's something small, someone criticizes you, your child says something careless, or the person you love looks away indifferently. Yet it hurts too much, angers you too much, and you ask yourself, why do I react so strongly? Carl Jung called that part of us the shadow. Not the evil part, but the abandoned part. The emotions we've forbidden, the memories we refuse to recall, the traits we've labeled as unacceptable, all of it gets pushed into the dark so we can be loved, accepted, seen as good. But what is rejected does not disappear. It only waits for us on nights like these. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When you are alone, with no noise to drown it out, the shadow begins to knock, and that is precisely when your real journey begins. When we lose ourselves to be loved. From a young age, we learn to divide ourselves in two, the parts that are praised and the parts that are scolded. We are the good child when we stay quiet, compliant, kind. We are the bad child when we get angry, when we desire, when we say no. As we grow, those rules follow us. At work, we hide our frustration to keep the peace. In marriage, we suppress our needs so no one will be disappointed. Gradually, we become good, but also exhausted, empty, and sometimes we explode. Jung believed that the shadow is not the enemy, but a part of the soul demanding its right to exist. If we live only in the light, only allowing ourselves to be gentle, positive, strong, we become victims of our own perfection. The shadow appears to remind us that we are still human, conflicted, fragile, envious, greedy, but also real and alive, meeting the part of ourselves we once hid. I remember the story of Rebecca, 57, a marriage therapist who had spent her entire life helping others heal their relationships. But when her own marriage fell apart, she spiraled into panic. "I found myself full of hatred," she told me, "and that terrified me. I wasn't allowed to hate." She began dreaming of arguing with a strange woman who looked exactly like her. In the dream, the woman screamed, "I've been here all along, why won't you look at me?" Rebecca realized that this was her shadow, the part of herself she had rejected to maintain the image of the healer. She started writing letters to the woman from her dream. In those letters, she didn't apologize or accuse. She simply asked, "What do you need from me?" The answer echoed in her mind, "I need to be angry. I need to tell the truth." That was the first step toward reconciliation. Jung called it making the darkness conscious. There is no need to eliminate the darkness, only to bring the light of awareness into it. When the shadow appears in everyday life, you don't need to dream to see your shadow. It shows up every day, through reactions you don't even understand. When someone succeeds and you feel jealousy, when someone criticizes you and you suddenly crumble, when you lash out for no reason or feel ashamed over something small, those moments do not mean you are bad. They are signals that a part of you is longing to be acknowledged. Remember this, the shadow doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to be heard, and only when it is heard will it stop controlling you. How to recognize and work with the shadow. 1. Identify recurring reactions. Write down 3 to 5 recent situations that triggered a strong emotional reaction in you. Ask yourself, which part of me is being touched? For example, If you feel anger when being criticized, perhaps within you is a child who was often scolded and is now afraid of being abandoned. 2. Name your shadow. You can imagine it as a person, an animal, or a symbolic image. Give it a name: the protector, the angry child, the one who wants to be loved. Naming helps you begin a dialogue rather than a battle. 3. Write or draw the dialogue. Use the technique of active imagination. Picture yourself having a conversation with your shadow. Write down what it says and how you respond. I remember a man named Luke, 48, who always lost control when his boss criticized him. In therapy, he wrote a letter to his angry part and asked, "What do you want?" That part answered, "I just want you to be respected." When Luke recognized that truth, he began setting boundaries at work instead of silently enduring. His anger eased and his energy returned. 4. Observe the shift in energy. Each time you allow the shadow to speak, you will feel something strange, less tired, clearer inside. Jung believed that the energy trapped in the unconscious returns once we reconcile with it. When darkness becomes a source of light, working with the shadow is not easy. Some days you feel like you've made progress, and then suddenly you find yourself back where you started. There will be moments you want to give up. But remember, the goal is not perfection, it is wholeness. Jung once said, "No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." A tree cannot rise toward the light unless its roots dare to touch the darkness. Humans are the same. Only when we face what we fear the most do we discover our true strength. A small practice to begin. If you find yourself unable to sleep tonight, try this exercise. Sit in the dark with a single small candle or dim light. Take a few deep breaths, then ask, which part of me needs to speak right now? Write down everything that comes up. Don't edit. Don't judge. It might be one sentence. It might be a whole page. Read it back and whisper, "I hear you." You don't need to fix anything. Just listen. Because once you begin to listen, the shadow no longer has to scream for attention. Reconciliation, the true step forward. Working with the shadow is a brave journey. It demands honesty, patience, and compassion toward yourself. But in return, you will feel something you've long searched for in others: wholeness. When the shadow and the self begin to merge, you are no longer dragged around by emotions. You react less, understand yourself more, and live with clearer intention. You stop fearing the dark because you know your light is strong enough to illuminate it. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. When you dare to face the darkness within, you also become gentler toward the darkness in others. And that is the real step forward, not surpassing anyone else, but moving closer to yourself." Maybe tonight, your shadow will visit again. It will speak in images, in emotions, in memories. Don't push it away. Let it sit beside you, like an old friend you once forgot. Just sit there together, in silence. Because perhaps, at the very moment you think you're facing the darkness, you're seeing the light of your soul for the very first time. 4. Using Jungian tools when you have no one to rely on. Early morning. You're making coffee, listening to the steady drip of the machine. The aroma rises, yet your mind drifts elsewhere. You curl up on the kitchen chair, watching the steam lift from the cup and disappear. Outside, the sky is gray and silent. A new day begins, but inside you, everything still feels unclear. There's no one to tell about the strange dream you had last night where you wandered into an old house with a door that never opened. You don't know why, but that image lingers. You might not realize it, but that is how the unconscious sends its message. Jung believed that the unconscious is always trying to speak to us through dreams, memories, images, or nameless sensations. Yet most of the time we're too busy to listen, and only when we are alone, when no one is filling the space with conversation or plans, does the mind finally open its gate to let those signals rise to the surface. Jung wrote, "The dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. That small door is waiting for you to open it, and if you have no one to guide you, Jungian tools are the map that can help you step into your inner world safely and creatively." Dream analysis. Listening to the first language of the unconscious. Dreams are where the unconscious tells stories in images rather than words. When you sleep, the parts of you suppressed during the day, fears, desires, incomplete emotions find their way back. Don't rush to interpret them with formulas like dreaming of water is good luck or seeing snakes is a bad omen. Jung emphasized that dreams don't use universal symbols but personal ones. Each person speaks their own language of the soul. Try practicing with these 5 simple steps. Step 1. As soon as you wake up, write down your dream immediately. Even if it's just a few scattered images, colors, sounds, or a single phrase, don't edit it. Step 2. Note the main characters, the setting, and the emotions that accompany them. Step 3. Ask yourself, if I were that character or object, what would I want to say? Step 4. Don't force a conclusion. A dream is meant to be lived with, not decoded. Step 5. After 3 to 5 days, read it again. You will begin to see a delicate thread connecting your dreams together. I once met a woman named Susan, 52, who often dreamed that she was lost in an abandoned warehouse, endlessly searching for an exit. When she wrote down her dream and tried speaking to the house, she heard a voice in her mind say, "I only keep what you're afraid to let go of." That was when she realized she had been living in attachment to an old job, to a relationship that had already ended. A month later, Susan quit her job and moved to another city. She said, "I didn't escape the dream, I walked through it." End of 4. Active imagination, conversing with the inner world. Jung developed this method during the most turbulent period of his life, when he broke away from Freud and fell into deep inner chaos. During hours of solitude, Jung wrote, painted, and conversed with the images that appeared in his mind. He said, "Every form of addiction is bad, no matter whether the narcotic be alcohol or morphine or idealism." In this case, he sought to cure himself of the addiction to rationality by opening a dialogue with his soul. The way to practice it is this: find a quiet space, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let an image or a recent emotion arise. It could be a person, a dream, or simply a color. Imagine yourself talking to it. Ask, "Why have you come here?" Or, "What do you need from me?" Write down the conversation as if you were scripting it. Don't control it. When you're done, read it back. Often, you'll be surprised by what your own hand has written. Evan, 46, shared that after his divorce, he felt angry and exhausted. During one session of practice, he imagined meeting himself at age 10, standing in the schoolyard crying. He asked, "Why are you crying?" The boy answered, "Because no one ever listens to me." Evan broke down in tears. He realized that what he needed was not control but the ability to listen to himself. Active imagination is not meaningless fantasy. It is a way to give the unconscious form so that consciousness and the unconscious can converse instead of battle. Art the language that reason does not speak. When you draw, write poetry or sculpt, you are not merely making art. You are giving the unconscious a voice. Jung believed that art is the mother tongue of the psyche, a place where images come before words, where the soul is free to speak without censorship. You don't have to be an artist. All you need is a sheet of paper, a few crayons, and permission to be ugly. Draw whatever appears: a curve, a face, a doorway, or simply the color that feels right to you. Then ask yourself, if this drawing could speak, what would it say to me? This practice helps you see what cannot yet be expressed in words. Sometimes it's sorrow, sometimes it's longing, and sometimes it's a quiet reminder that you are still alive, still creating even when no one is watching. Ritual, small acts of transformation. In Jungian psychology, ritual is seen as the bridge between the outer world and the inner one. When you create a symbolic act, the mind understands that something has changed. Try simple rituals. Write down what you need to let go of, then burn the paper. As you watch the smoke rise, whisper to yourself, "I allow this to leave." Each morning, light a candle and place your hand over your heart. "I am ready to listen to myself today." When you're weary, wash your hands slowly, as if you were cleansing old energy before beginning again. Never underestimate these small gestures. Rituals are how the soul remembers that you have the right to change. When solitude becomes a creative space, these tools are not magic, but they transform solitude into a structured journey. When you learn how to work with dreams, to converse with inner images, and to use symbols for transformation, you no longer drift helplessly in loneliness, you participate in the life within you. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And to become that true self, you must learn how to walk alone, not in emptiness, but in dialogue, creativity, and ritual. Tonight, before you sleep, place a notebook beside your bed. Write down a question you want to send into your dreams. For example, what do I need to understand about myself right now? When you wake, record whatever you remember, even if it's only a color, a sound, or a fleeting feeling. Or tomorrow morning, before making coffee, sit for 10 minutes, close your eyes and ask, is there an image that wishes to be seen today? Then draw it. No one needs to understand what you're doing, but deep down, you will know you are not truly alone. The unconscious is speaking, and you are learning to listen. Loneliness, when given form and method, is no longer a desert. It becomes a quiet garden where each symbolic seed will take root, and each small act will reconnect you with the most sacred thing of all, yourself. 5. Managing complexes and avoiding self-isolation. Late in the afternoon, you're driving home after a long day. The radio plays an old song, the kind that used to make you feel at peace, but today it catches in your throat. Your chest tightens as if someone is squeezing your heart. Suddenly, you're overcome by a wave of sadness that seems to come from nowhere. Just seconds ago, you were fine, and now tears are spilling down your face. You can't quite explain why. Was it the melody, the voice, or that faint, familiar feeling of being left behind? That's the moment a complex inside you has awakened. Jung described complexes as autonomous clusters of emotion, bundles of memories, beliefs, and feelings woven tightly around a painful theme, often formed in childhood. They lie dormant in the unconscious, waiting to be triggered by a situation that resembles the original wound. When a complex surfaces, you are no longer in charge of your emotions. You react too strongly, too fast, too deeply, as if reliving an old pain. Jung wrote, "Everyone knows nowadays that people have complexes. What is not so well known, though far more important theoretically, is that complexes can have us. When you are alone, your complexes rise most easily. Without social roles to maintain composure, without anyone to distract your mind, those buried emotions finally find space to take over." A woman named Linda, 55, shared that every time her son failed to call, she felt furious and abandoned. She knew her reaction was irrational, but she couldn't control it. Through the process of emotional journaling, she began noticing a recurring image in her dreams, a little girl standing by the door, waiting for parents who never returned. It was a forgotten memory. Her parents had divorced when she was 6, and she had stood there waiting all afternoon. That abandonment complex had lived inside Linda for decades. Every time her son went silent, that complex took control. She no longer reacted as a grown mother, but as the little girl she once was. Once she understood this, she began to pause, place her hand over her chest, and whisper, "It's okay, you're here now, and you're no longer abandoned." Gradually, the anger dissolved. The signs that a complex is in control include emotions that are too intense for the situation. A small critique feels like a personal attack. Repetitive behavior, choosing the same type of person who keeps hurting you, as if drawn to an old pattern. Recurring dreams, a figure, scene, or feeling that keeps coming back, marking the trace of a complex in the unconscious. And disconnection from reality after each emotional outburst. You feel regret and confusion, unsure why you acted that way. A complex is not just a psychological wound. It is a living part of the unconscious, carrying its own energy. When triggered, it can hypnotize you. So how do you recognize and work with a complex? You begin by accepting your emotions without judgment. When a complex appears, don't rush to think positive. Take a deep breath and say, "I feel angry divided by abandoned, divided by ashamed." Naming the emotion helps your brain separate awareness from automatic reaction. Then, give your complex a name. Choose a symbolic one, the forgotten child, the one who must be right, or the one who isn't allowed to be weak. Naming turns it from a force that controls you into something you can speak to. Next, write or draw to express it. Take a piece of paper and write a letter to your complex. Ask, "What do you want from me?" Or, "What are you trying to protect?" If you prefer images, draw your complex as a symbol. One woman once drew her anger as a lion in chains. When she looked at the drawing, she realized that the anger wasn't an enemy, It was power that had been restrained. Set a time limit for the complex. If an emotion becomes too intense, give it an appointment. Tell yourself, I will give this feeling 15 minutes. After that, I will take a walk or do something else. This helps you learn to coexist with your complex without being consumed by it. When solitude turns into isolation, there's a fine line between healthy solitude and self-isolation. Working with complexes requires time alone, but if you sink too deeply into emotion, you might start building walls that separate you from the world. A clear example is Robert, 49, who lost his mother in an accident when he was a child. After his wife's death, he withdrew completely, saying, "No one understands me." He believed he was healing in silence, but in reality, his loss complex was pulling him into a dark abyss. It wasn't until he joined a grief support group that Robert realized solitude helped him listen to himself, but connection helped him return to life. Jung reminded us, the possession of complexes does not in itself signify neurosis, but their autonomy does. The problem isn't having complexes, everyone has them, but allowing them to control your entire existence. Working with a complex can touch very deep layers of memory and pain. If you ever feel overwhelmed, short of breath, or flooded by painful memories, pause and reach out to a trusted therapist. A companion doesn't heal for you. They help keep you safe as you open the doors to your unconscious. No one can walk this journey in absolute isolation. Solitude is a tool, not a destination. Now, try a small exercise called your personal complex map. S1. First, take a sheet of paper and draw a circle in the middle that's you. Around it, write down the emotions or reactions that keep repeating throughout your life. Anger, abandonment, must do well. Draw arrows connecting each emotion to a specific memory or image. Read it again, and choose one complex you want to start working with. Finally, keep a journal for that complex for 7 days. Note when it appears, what it says, and what it wants. Over time, you'll notice that the complex is no longer a lurking monster. It becomes a part of your soul that you're learning to care for. Working with a complex isn't about banishing darkness, but about learning to collaborate with it. When you learn to listen, a complex becomes a source of creative energy, a reservoir of once suppressed power. Jung once said, "There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection." Accepting your complex means accepting your imperfection, and that is the beginning of true wholeness. When you learn to recognize your complexes, you're no longer dragged by old memories. You'll find yourself reacting less, understanding more deeply, and gradually gaining the ability to stand firm without anyone holding you up. And when a song, a face, or a single word shakes you to your core, you'll know it isn't fate mocking you, but an inner voice whispering, "There's a part of me that needs to be seen." So pull over, take a deep breath, and softly say, "I'm listening." Because sometimes, in that single moment of awareness, you've already begun to move forward, not away from the past, but through it. 6. Activating the inner archetypes to move forward. There are mornings when you wake up and can't bring yourself to get out of bed. Everything feels heavier than it should. Work, relationships, even facing your own reflection in the mirror. You feel suspended in between, no longer who you once were, but not yet sure who you're becoming. That is the state Jung called the transitional phase, the moment when the soul is quietly restructuring itself, searching for direction after the outer world has shifted. And it's precisely in this phase that the archetypes, the inner, ancient patterns of the psyche begin to awaken. Jung believed that every human being carries within them primordial images, universal psychological patterns inherited through the collective unconscious. Whether you believe in them or not, they live within you, like dormant seeds waiting to be stirred. When we find ourselves alone, with no one left to lean on, these archetypes become spiritual forces that help us endure the storm and rebuild from within. He wrote, "The archetype is like an old watercourse along which the water of life has flowed for centuries, digging a deep channel for itself." In other words, if you learn to listen, the archetypes will show you paths your soul has already walked for thousands of years. The first archetype to awaken is the hero. This is not the grand image from films or myths. It is the part of you that dares to take another step, even when fear tightens its grip. The inner hero doesn't need to wield a sword or conquer kingdoms. It needs only the courage to face itself, and the persistence to keep going through the weary days. The hero embodies the energy of action, the voice inside that knows the only way out of darkness is through it. Jung once said, "Where your fear is, there is your task." Fear is not a sign you're on the wrong path. It is the threshold you're meant to cross. Try a simple exercise. Choose one action you've been avoiding. It could be making a phone call, cleaning your room, or writing a journal entry, and do it, even when you don't feel like it. That is how the hero awakens. Every time you do something small but right, the hero within grows a little stronger. A man named Chris, 58, once told me that after retiring, he felt useless and empty, but he decided that every morning he would walk 2 miles, rain or shine. "I don't know where I'm going," he said, "but I know I'm moving." After a few months, he noticed the change. His body was stronger, his mind clearer, and he began to write again, something he had dreamed of doing in his youth. Chris's hero didn't wear armor. It was simply the worn-out pair of shoes that carried him forward. The second archetype is the wise old man, divided by woman, the inner teacher, the symbol of wisdom and guidance. When there is no one left to ask for advice, you can invite this teacher to appear through intentional imagination. Sit quietly in silence. Close your eyes and picture a figure that represents clarity and understanding. It might be an elder you once knew, a character from a book, or a vague image of someone you trust. Ask 3 questions. What do I need to learn right now? What am I refusing to see? And, if you were me, what would you do next? Don't try to force an answer, just listen to what arises in your mind. A woman named Hannah, 47, once practiced this exercise when she felt lost after her divorce. In her imagination, she saw an elderly woman with silver hair sitting beside a fire, smiling gently and saying, "You don't have to run. Stay and reheat your soup." The phrase sounded strange, but to Hannah, it meant to return and care for what she had neglected: herself, her home, her small daily rituals. 3 months later, she wrote, "I don't have a big plan yet, but I feel like I'm heading in the right direction." The wise woman didn't give her a specific answer, but offered her something far more important, a state of peace, the very thing every lost soul needs most. And finally, the deepest and most fundamental archetype, the self. If the hero is the one who acts, and the wise old is the one who guides, then the self is the center of the entire spiritual system. The self is where all parts of you, light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, come together as one. Jung wrote, "The self is not only the center but also the whole circumference which embraces both conscious and unconscious." In other words, the self is not just the rational I, but the totality of who you are, including the parts you have never touched. As you move through challenges, listen to your dreams, work with your emotions, and engage in dialogue with your inner images, you draw closer to the self. This feeling doesn't arise from victory or achieving a goal, but from the quiet certainty of being in the right place. When the self is active, you no longer seek others to validate your worth. You no longer need to prove anything. You simply live present, whole, and at peace in your own skin. If you wish to experience the self, try a simple ritual. Each night, place your hand over your heart and ask yourself, which part of me was heard today, and which part needs more of my attention? Write down just one line. Over time, you'll begin to see your inner map emerge. Activating the archetypes is not some distant, mystical ceremony. It's the way we learn to guide ourselves when there is no one left to lead us. When you live with the hero, you find motivation. When you listen to the wise one, you find direction. When you connect with the self, you find wholeness. From that point on, solitude is no longer an empty hallway. It becomes a radiant path where the most beautiful parts of you are waiting to be reunited. Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And perhaps the entire journey of moving forward can be summed up in that single truth: a return inward, to the sacred archetypes that do not live in books, but are breathing, alive, and calling your name every time you are brave enough to listen. 7. A practical roadmap. The 8-week plan to move forward alone. There are days when you feel like you're merely existing. You open your eyes in the morning and move through your routine like a machine, brewing coffee, answering emails, tidying up, then find yourself staring blankly out the window. No one is there to ask if you're okay. No one truly knows what you're fighting inside. This feeling isn't an obvious despair, it's more like a quiet, unending drizzle that soaks the soul. You know you need to change, but you don't know where to start. Maybe you've read books, listened to talks, tried different methods, yet everything seems to wash away like waves returning to the sea. Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Awakening is a journey, and that journey demands time, structure, and patience." That's why he viewed personal development as individuation, not a sudden burst of inspiration, but a deliberate, step-by-step unfolding of the self. And for those learning to move forward alone, having a clear path transforms solitude into a field of discipline and creativity, rather than a pit of confusion and despair. I want you to see the next 8 weeks as 8 steps on a staircase, not to climb quickly, but to learn how to stand firmly on each one. Week 1. Creating space. Every inner journey begins by clearing a space for the soul to breathe. This week, reduce noise as much as possible. Turn off phone notifications for at least 1 hour a day, avoid listening to music while doing housework, and eat at least 1 meal in silence. The goal is to help you realize just how loud your inner world really is. At the same time, start keeping a psychological journal, not to tell stories, but to record emotions, images, dreams, and small details. A woman named Martha, 53, once told me that just 10 minutes of writing each night helped her feel like my brain was falling back into order. Silence is not emptiness, it is the foundation from which everything truly begins. Week 2. Listening to dreams. Jung saw dreams as letters sent from the unconscious to the conscious. Each morning, as soon as you wake up, write down what you remember, even if it's just a single image or sensation. Don't try to interpret it. This week, focus on noticing recurring emotions in your dreams: fear, confusion, being chased, or standing before a doorway. You can even paste a few images representing your dreams onto the wall to create your own dream map. A man named Dean, 59, shared that after 3 weeks of recording his dreams, he noticed a recurring image of a wounded bird. "I realized I was that bird," he said, "and my dreams were telling me I could still heal." Week 3. Working with the shadow. This is the week of confrontation. Write down 10 negative reactions you've had recently: envy, anger, insecurity, irritation, or sudden sadness. Each reaction is a signal from a rejected part of yourself. Choose one and write a short dialogue. What does this part of me want to say? This may feel uncomfortable, but as Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you are brave enough to listen, the darkness stops being something to fear. Week 4. Active imagination. Spend 10 minutes each day talking to your inner world. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and call forth an image from a dream or an emotion from the previous week. Imagine that you are meeting this image again in a specific setting. It could be a garden, a room, or a beach. Ask, "What have you come here to tell me?" Don't try to control the process. Write everything down afterward. This was the very method Jung used during the most turbulent period of his life, when he wrote The Red Book. It is not daydreaming, it is a way for the unconscious to speak. Week 5. Art and symbols. Not everyone can draw, but every soul knows how to express itself. Create a small object that represents the emotion you're carrying: a watercolor painting, a stone carved with a word, or simply a branch tied with a red string. Place it somewhere you can see every day. It serves as a reminder that you are moving forward, that your process has a real, visible shape. Jung once wrote that when the unconscious takes form, it loses its power to dominate. Art is how you reclaim your inner sovereignty. Week 6. Transition ritual. This week, create a small ritual to mark your passage out of the old phase. You might write down what you want to let go of and burn it, or light a candle and speak aloud a new affirmation. A ritual is not superstition. It is a symbolic act that helps the mind register transformation. When the body performs something with intention, the soul follows. Week 7. Activating the archetype. Now it's time to call your inner strengths back to life. Write an imaginary letter from the wise old man or woman to yourself: a teacher, a guide, or a symbolic figure of wisdom. Let them tell you 3 things: what you need to know, what you should release, and what you are being called to become. If you wish, you can also write a letter in return, expressing gratitude for their guidance. The goal is not to believe in their literal existence, but to realize that this wisdom has always been within you. Week 8. Reflection and next steps. Read through everything you've written, drawn, and felt. Note 3 things that have changed within you. It could be the way you see fear, or how you respond to loneliness. Then write a commitment. For the next 3 months, I will continue to listen, record, and trust this process. This 8-week journey is not a cure for every wound. It is a map to help you find your way. It does not ask for perfection, only presence. Jung once said, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, but only outgrown." The goal is not to fix yourself, but to grow beyond what once held you back. When the 8 weeks pass, you may still be alone, but you will not be the same. You will know how to speak with yourself, how to hear your inner voice instead of outer noise, how to move forward even when no one walks beside you. And perhaps that is the deepest meaning of moving on. Not to go farther than others, but to go deeper into yourself where solitude no longer frightens you, because you know that within, someone is walking with you every single day. 8. Common obstacles and how to overcome them. In the evening, you sit on your familiar chair, intending to open your journal and continue your inner journey. But instead of writing, you just stare at the blank page. The room is so quiet you can hear the ticking of the clock, and suddenly, fear rushes in, the fear that you'll always be like this, alone, unable to move forward. You reach for your phone, thinking of scrolling through social media just to hear someone's voice, but then you put it down again. A part of you wants to continue the journey. Another part just wants to escape from yourself, and that is precisely what Jung called the breaking point of consciousness, the moment when the ego resists transformation. No one ever said that the journey inward would be easy. It demands that you step into the darkness where no one holds the light for you. Jung wrote, "There is no birth of consciousness without pain. Each time we go deeper into our own truth, another mask falls away, revealing the fragile parts we've tried so long to hide." And it is at that exact moment that 3 major obstacles appear, 3 undercurrents that often make people give up. The fear of loneliness, the need for validation, and being overwhelmed by intense emotion. Yet, if you know how to look closely, each obstacle is not a wall but a doorway. The first obstacle is the fear of loneliness. Even though you chose this journey to become stronger, there will still be nights when all you want is for someone to tell you you're not crazy, that you're still on the right path. In a world addicted to constant connection, silence can feel as terrifying as the space between 2 musical notes. A man named Peter, 54, once shared that after his wife passed away, he began his self-discovery journey by recording his dreams. But only a few days in, he stopped, saying it felt too empty. He told me, "I thought I was disappearing." After being encouraged to resume, Peter began adding one simple line each night: "I'm still here." That single sentence became an anchor that kept him grounded. Because sometimes, overcoming loneliness doesn't require philosophy, it just takes reminding yourself that you still exist. The second obstacle is the need for validation. During the process of self-discovery, you will often doubt yourself. Are the things I'm seeing real? Am I truly making progress, or am I just imagining it? This is the moment when the ego longs to return to its comfort zone, the place where others define your worth. But Jung once emphasized, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. No one can confirm whether your path is right or wrong except you. Each person carries a unique map, and if you keep waiting for someone else's permission, you will remain standing at the doorway forever. To overcome this, create your own safety map, a list of people, places, or activities that help you feel grounded. It could be a trusted friend, a therapist, or simply taking a walk in the nearby park. Place this map somewhere visible. When you feel lost, return to one of those anchors. The goal is not to avoid the inner journey, but to have a temporary harbor so you don't lose yourself amid the emotional tides. The third obstacle is overwhelming emotion, especially when you begin touching old, painful memories. The unconscious doesn't wait for the right time to appear, it surfaces when you're ready, or when you have no other choice. A woman named Emily, 46, once shared that while she was practicing dialogue with her shadow, she suddenly burst into uncontrollable tears. She wrote, "I was afraid it would swallow me." But what truly happened was that the part of her long suppressed was finally allowed to breathe. She didn't need to analyze, only to take a deep breath, place a hand over her chest, and remind herself, "I am safe." Those three simple words became a bridge between the unconscious and the present, between the storm and the ground beneath her feet. If the emotions become too overwhelming, remember that pausing is not a failure. Jung once advised, "You are not what happens to you, you are what you choose to become." Allow yourself to rest. Spend time in nature, listen to music, cook, or talk with someone you trust. When your emotions have settled, you can return to your journey with a steadier heart. Another obstacle that few people talk about is the lack of skill in reading and understanding the language of the unconscious. When you first begin recording your dreams or imagination, you may feel confused. What do these images mean? Jung once warned that if we try to interpret too quickly, we kill the soul of the dream. Instead of searching for the right answer, ask open-ended questions. How does this dream make me feel? If this were a message for me, what would it be saying? Like learning a new language, patience is the key. After a few weeks, you'll start to recognize recurring images and symbols that hold personal meaning, and in that moment, the unconscious will know that you are truly listening. However, every journey requires a safe boundary. If you feel that the memories, images, or emotions are too intense, don't try to handle them alone. Seek out a therapist or a support group. A timely conversation can be the bridge that keeps you from sinking. Asking for help does not make you weak, it is a sign of wisdom, because it shows that you are clear-minded enough to know that self-healing does not mean isolation. Finally, remember that no one walks this path without stumbling. Jung said, "The way is not straight but spiral." The journey of inner growth is not a straight ascent. It is a spiral that brings you back to the same places. Only this time, you see them more clearly. When you feel afraid, when you feel stuck, when you want to give up, stop, take a deep breath, and whisper, "I'm still on the path." Because the truth is, you never left it. Every fall, every hesitation, every blank page you can't fill, they're all part of the process. Solitude does not mean being abandoned. It is an invitation to learn how to stand beside yourself, even when no one else is there. And if one night, in the darkness and silence, you hear a small whisper from within saying, "I'm still here," trust it, because that is your soul, smiling back at you. 9. From eccentric to creator, turning solitude into a creative laboratory. Perhaps you've sat in a cafe looking around and suddenly realizing you're not like anyone else. The way you think, the way you observe, the way you ask questions, it all seems abnormal. People around you talk about the weather, politics, or their weekend plans while your mind drifts elsewhere. What would happen if humans could communicate through colors? Or, if I recorded my emotions each day as sounds, what would they sound like? You stay silent, then smile to yourself. But then, almost reflexively, you close your notebook and hide those weird ideas away. No one told you to do it, yet there's a small voice inside whispering, "Don't be too different. People will think you're crazy." Carl Jung would probably look at that moment and smile, because according to him, it is often those who feel they don't belong, who stand at the threshold of profound inner transformation. He once wrote, "The creative mind plays with the objects it loves." The creative spirit is not born from conformity, but from the courage to play, to experiment, to do things differently. And paradoxically, it is often only in solitude that the archetypes of the creator and the magician, two ancient symbols of creativity and transformation, can fully emerge. Jung saw the unconscious as a treasury of rich images and symbols, a place where creative ideas arise not from logic but from the calling of the soul. When we are alone, free from the influence of social norms, these images begin to surface, a melody that plays in your head, an image that begs to be painted, or a sentence that insists on being written. The creator archetype is the energy of bringing something out of nothing, while the magician is the part of us that knows how to transform pain into art, disappointment into meaning. Both are allies of solitude. Yet modern society does not easily accept difference. Those who think differently, act differently, or simply fail to conform to the collective rhythm are often labeled as eccentric. But Jung would say that is a sign that an archetype is powerfully active. When the inner creative energy rises, it shakes the old structures of the ego, causing both others and ourselves to feel unsettled. However, if that energy is guided, eccentricity can become a sign of spiritual rebirth. I remember the story of Laura, 45, a woman once called odd at her former company. She loved wearing vintage clothes, decorating her desk with strange objects, and constantly asking, "Why must we do it this way instead of trying another?" When she was laid off, she fell into a hollow period, withdrawing into her small apartment. One day, while cleaning, she found her daughter's old box of paints. She began painting scenes from memory, a cafe, a trip, the faces of loved ones she had lost. She posted a few pictures online just to kill time. Unexpectedly, many people responded, saying they felt peace and nostalgia through her paintings. 2 years later, Laura became a part-time painter and opened a class on art journaling for middle-aged women. She said, "I no longer try to fit in. I create the world I want to live in." That was when the magician archetype came alive. The transformer does not seek to escape the darkness, but learns how to turn that darkness into creative material. Jung believed that only when we face our loneliness, our feelings of rejection, can the repressed energies find their release. In that moment, solitude ceases to be withdrawal and becomes the laboratory where the soul experiments with new ways of being. If you are feeling different, try turning eccentricity into action. Begin a 14-day project called Prototyping the Self, a small journey to reconnect with your creative archetype. During the first 3 days, list the 10 craziest ideas you've ever had without censoring yourself. From days 4 to 7, choose one idea and make a small prototype, a piece of writing, a short tune, a sketch, or even just a playlist that reflects your emotions. From days 8 to 10, share it with a trusted friend, or keep it in your journal. From days 11 to 14, refine it and decide, do you want to expand it, preserve it, or let it go? What matters is not the final product, but the act of experimentation. The moment you dare to try, you have already stepped beyond self-rejection. Another example is Mark, 50, an engineer who once loved building model airplanes. After his divorce, he fell into depression and stopped working. In therapy, he was encouraged to return to his old hobby, but with a new perspective, seeing the act of assembling as a form of meditation. After a few months, Mark built an airplane using recycled materials and exhibited it at a community fair. It was praised not only for its craftsmanship, but for its message, "I've learned how to fly again, even with different wings." Mark smiled and said, "I thought I had lost everything, but it turns out I was just changing form." End of. Difference, when given structure, becomes creativity. Jung once emphasized, the creation of something new is not accomplished by the intellect, but by the play instinct acting from inner necessity. That means true creativity doesn't arise from the effort to do well, but from the inner need to express. When we stop fearing misunderstanding, creative energy begins to flow naturally like water finding its way back to its course. However, Jung also warned that creativity must not be used as an escape from pain. If you create merely to avoid feeling, you are turning art into a wall. Therefore, whenever you make or do something, pause and ask yourself, am I expressing or am I hiding? The difference lies in honesty. A true creator dares to look into the darkness and bring it to light, not to conceal it, but to understand it. If you want to go deeper, try a ritual called Dialogue with the Archetype. Spend 20 minutes in silence and imagine the creator or magician archetype entering your room. Ask, what do you need in order to turn this idea into action? Write down the very first answer that comes to mind, no matter how strange it seems, and then act on it, even if it's the smallest step. It could be buying new paints, writing one page, or simply clearing your desk. That small act is the thread connecting you back to your original source of creativity. Remember, eccentric is merely the name given by those who do not yet understand. When you learn to discipline your difference to turn it into language, form, and action, the label will redefine itself. As Jung once wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. There is no pair of shoes that fits everyone." Your task is not to fit in, but to dare to design your own. And perhaps that is the simplest definition of creativity, to live with such honesty that you no longer fear being different. In that state, solitude is no longer an empty room, but a workshop, a sacred space where you, once called eccentric, are quietly crafting the very first miracle of your life. So, we have come to see together that solitude is not a flaw. It is the essential condition for Jung's process of individuation to unfold. Through it, you come to understand yourself deeply, to integrate the shadow, and to awaken your inner source of autonomy. Remember this core message: you do not need to make anyone fall in love with you. You are the light of your own soul. The confidence you gain when walking alone is the truest kind of confidence. Confidence is not the absence of fear, it is the refusal to let fear lead the way. From now on, you move forward not because you must, but because you have consciously chosen to be yourself. To take the very first step on this powerful solitary path, I invite you to spend 10 minutes today writing down a dream or a passing thought. Keep this dialogue with yourself alive. Because, as Jung once said, in solitude, you confront a whole inner world waiting to be discovered. 1. Are you ready to step into the deeper part of yourself? If this message resonates with you, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications today.